Hi guys, this is just us, so I will open up our workshop officially for January 23rd. And welcome everybody, I wanted to start tonight's meeting with a very brief discussion. It's not an action item. It is not a deliberation. It is just a very brief input from folks. We know that one of the things that we asked Dr. DeFalco to do this year was to take a look at special ed and perhaps a redesign or perhaps a realignment or just kind of how does special ed work in our district. And so, as most of you know, he's given that some thought. So I wanted to use a brief amount of our time tonight to just give some general feedback that people had about proposed ideas that you might have seen or thoughts that you might have regarding special ed and the interest, so that when we have our meeting in February, we can come with a plan and have an official action item and move forward. So I know people had very different thoughts about plans they've seen or discussions they've had, so I wanted us all to be able to throw those out there so we know what other people are thinking. So from my perspective, well, I won't go first. Does anybody want to go first?
Well, I'm wondering, does Jason have to share actually what we're
that was my
talking
question
about?
too.
Yeah.
So some of the
It hasn't been
initial thinking.
Yeah, because
sure,
we
we can do
withheld
that.
it from
Yeah. So
meeting.
so some of the initial thoughts around the position are to look at the existing position that we are referring to as an interim special education director, and looking at how to expand that the roles and responsibilities of that position. And so when we think about our work, the way I've asked the committee to think about it is anything that is part of core teaching and learning, so curriculum, our core curriculum, our assessment systems, our teaching and learning practices, anything that impacts all kids really is coming from the Office of Teaching and Learning, the Office of the Superintendent, in combination, in conjunction with the schools directly. What we are looking to do is say, well, how do we look at this current position of interim special ed director and actually blow that position out to really work to oversee all of the support systems and structures and programs that would fit outside of the core teaching and learning work, and look at all of those intervention models. So when we think about it, we think about all students need core curriculum, core instruction, etc. But some kids need core and more. Some kids need more. They need some intervention services and intervention supports in order to stay on level. And so, or accelerate for that matter. It's not always just about staying on grade level. It's about accelerating those kids that are ready to do more. And so what we are looking at is taking the existing interim director of special education and creating a director of learner support services. That individual would do just that. They would oversee all of the learner support services in the district. And so that includes special education. It includes English language learners. It would include all of the work with our RTI model, which is response to intervention in each of our buildings, and all of the supports that go along with that. Our reading specialists that are providing those services, any future math specialists that would be providing those services directly to kids, all of our intervention programs that we're using across our schools to provide additional supports for kids so that we have the alignment in place throughout buildings and across the district, and looking at the social-emotional learning piece of the work, because we know that many times those non-academic barriers get in the way, of students achieving. So this position is much larger than just a special education director. This position would include all of those other components. With that being said, I do not think that it is feasible for us to do the depth and level of work within the special education department specifically, which is over 300 students, about 325 kids, with just that one position overseeing the structures and the services within that department for all of those areas. And so what I'm proposing is, in our current model, we have 4 team chair positions. What I want to do is, that, by the way, of those 4, not all of them are full-time team chairs. Some teach courses, some work .7. They're actually not a full-time team chair. What I'm recommending or asking the committee to think about, I guess at this point is, not an action item, but just to think about, is taking one of the team chair positions and converting that into some type of an assistant support role for the Director of Learner Support Services, just for special education, so that we do have a very tight lens on these services within the special education department specifically. We know from having looked at our achievement data, so the numbers, but we also know anecdotally from what we hear and what we see, that our students with special needs is the subgroup in our district that is not moving. That is the group that we need to pay significant attention to and really start to overhaul not just the structural components to the department itself, but actually the programs and resources and how we deliver services to kids. But before we get to that, we've got to get the structure right. And so, the initial thinking was to have a Director of Learner Support Services. Underneath that director was an assistant assistant administrator for special ed. But taking those 4 team chairs and eliminating one to convert it to that assistant for a special education administrator position. So the overall number of full-time equivalencies, FTEs, doesn't change. It's still 5. It would be 5. How we're utilizing those 5 bodies would be different, and in alignment with the direction of the district in terms of the goals we've set for our students with special needs and for that particular department. And so the initial thinking was around having that position a Unit B position, and I know there was some thinking around that. And so with that, I'll pause. I hope, does that give enough context to?
Everybody good? Okay. So, now having heard that, did anybody have any initial thoughts that they'd like to be considered, to add to this topic or discussion, or concerns, or? Aaron?
So with that, Jason had presented the 2 job descriptions. And I just, when I initially reviewed it, like he said, I definitely see how you're painting that picture with the core teaching and learning and then the core and more. But the more, I think, is still missing a few things. And I had already mentioned this to Jason, where I feel like there's more we could capture into a position of an assistant administrator, like extended school year, like summer, where we pay a stipend to cover 5 weeks of summer school, essentially, which is usually run by the special ed department.
Right.
But why wouldn't it roll into this person's role?
Right.
That was my first glance at it. Since then, I've definitely still had I realized that wouldn't be a Unit B position anymore. That would not fall into
Right.
the parameters of that unit, because it would be a 12-month employee. But I do think, even though you're presenting it, Jason, we're still 5 positions, but differently, it's still an additional administrator. So I think we just need to make sure we're publicly saying that we need it. This is why we need it. It is another administrator, but we've pulled back in these areas to cover that expense, and these are the job responsibilities of that new administrator. And I think that would end up falling under a personal contract too, not Unit B.
Yeah. And if I may, I think that's a really good point about we did, in the central office reorganization, we eliminated one of the consultants that we use at $50,000, and he oversees all the title I, Title II.
But that would be falling under Director of Learning and
Right.
Support.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so I think to the exact point you're making, Aaron, about that is, I think it would be important to note that we have eliminated in one place, but we still have to pick that work
Right.
up.
Right.
And
That
so-
would be going to this director,
Yep.
and then, but there's still missing pieces from the assistant on the initial job description that was given to us, which I'm saying is the extended school year. I think that this job description should capture that. I also, voiced a concern on this position specifically overseeing out-of-district work, where that is such an expense to us that I feel it should probably be under the core teaching and learning, for mostly because of the financial impact to our district, that it would fall under the director, not the assistant. But those were just opinions and feedback from our conversation.
Thank you.
And I guess that's part of the reason why I wanted this to come to the whole group, because people heard some pieces and not other pieces if you were the first person who kind of got some information, or, and I had written very much the same thing and shared the same with Jason, as I truly think that we need to look at that assistant as 12, well, I think all of the assistant principals, but that's beside the point. A 12-month to do that summer support, get out of some of these stipends we're paying in addition for summer programming and things like that.
Well, it would be nice to be able to say it's supporting the salary.
Mhm. Any other, I know some people were going to look at the whole concept of team chairs and time and caseloads, and I don't know.
And
if
he did
anybody
share,
that.
I had asked for that information, and it was that shared with everyone? Like
Yes,
what
so-
their caseload is now and would be going to the 3. And I shared with Jason, I don't know if everyone else is aware of this either, is we only had 3
Before.
until the past few years.
Team chairs?
3 full-time, and there was a point in the last 4 years where a .6 was added to Millville, and things
7, I
were
think.
changed.
From my notes.
That would, actually, I don't, that's all I'm going to say about that. We ran with 3 prior. When I first came to this district with my kids, and I was actually transferring one of my kids from one school to another with an IEP, and there were only 3, and one was, so there were 2 full-time and 1 part-time, and it was impossible to communicate, but that was a different story for another, many years ago.
But even now, I mean, I know I talked to Jason and you didn't touch upon it right now. The team chairs right now are somewhat spread between buildings, at least in one case, and finding that team chair when you need them is very difficult. And aligning team chairs so that there's continuity, so when your child comes out of the elementary school and comes into the middle school knows your kid. That there's somebody in that building who's seen them and seen what's there. I think there is a benefit to having somebody who knows.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you-
Or
I'm
at least
glad you mentioned that.
participates in transition meetings.
Yeah.
I'm
to
glad
get
you
your
mentioned
child.
that, because I think just so everybody has a sense of that model, we're looking to make the team chair as a pre-K to 2, a 3 to 6, and then a 7 through 12. And so the pre-K to 2 would work across the elementary schools. The 3 to 6 would also work across the 2 elementary schools, but would also be that bridge to middle school. And so that as our children transition to middle school, I think to your point, Karen, there is that individual here ready to receive that child, that knows that child very, very well, is able to help that child and their family, quite frankly, transition into that middle school model, and then make that handoff to the last person in that leg of that race, so to speak, at the 7 through 12 grade level. So you've got that seamless secondary support running through the upper middle school into the high school.
Anybody else? So of
Go
course I have. I was waiting to see what other people's comments were. So I personally, when I saw this model, thought this was a lot of special ed. This is a lot. I mean, of course, I'm going to draw from my personal experience as a special ed coordinator. My district is significantly larger than BMR, and we do not have this much overview of special ed. So I think that when we added the assistant superintendent in this district, we talked about that position kind of overlooking some of these programs that I feel like we're now talking about switching over here. So I just think it's a lot. So I am in a district, and I don't know my numbers in my district, but we have a director of special education, and we have 5 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a very large high school. We only have 3 coordinators of special education, which align with our team chairs, and we have 1 director.
But how many, so you have 3 team chairs as well, though?
We have 3 team chairs, well,
3 coordinators.
no team chairs. The
Team chairs are
coordinators
coordinators.
Are
are
the team
similar
chairs.
to the team chairs,
3 coordinators, and then what else?
just the director of special education,
And no one else?
no one else.
So who oversees the ELL
Title.
or?
Yeah, who does
titles?
ELL, title services?
So
who does all
title
that?
services go through the special ed and the assistant superintendent. And so there is an ELL coordinator who overlooks part of the district, but it is not an administrative, she's a Unit A employee. That's her sole job, so she doesn't teach. So I think this
So they're
this
getting an
model.
admin function
Somewhere
for
else.
teacher costs.
Well, so she's the person, she's the kind of liaison to the staff, and then, you know, either the assistant superintendent and director of special education help with the higher level kind of
So-
reporting
So
processes.
who supervises all the special ed teachers?
The team chair, so I as a coordinator
Can evaluate?
am a building supervisor. I can evaluate, though I don't anymore because the building principal now does that. But and then the director evaluates the coordinators.
Yeah, in our current model,
So
the-
I guess I guess one piece of information I was missing as I thought about this is sort of the team chair position. Is it more or less than I'm imagining? Because,
Can you-
again, I'm at a school that's probably 3 times bigger than BMR. I'm the only coordinator there,
children?
and I do an elementary school.
For how
So
many
what
children?
keeps, my number is probably mid-200s just for the high school. And we're talking about 300 for the district here.
so can I ask you a clarifying question to best
Sure.
get a sense of
And I might
that?
not know the exact answer, so I might have to get back to you, but
Yeah, no, I just want to get a sense of, you said, you know,
terrible with numbers.
I want to make sure you asked a question, and I think you were asking about their role, right?
So like,
To
I'm just
understand.
wondering, what do besides IEP meetings, and, you know, what do the team chairs do in addition? If they're not teaching, what else is their role that wouldn't fall under what we're proposing to be under the assistant director's job?
So right now they are. So we have some that aren't full-time. We have some that are teaching additional courses underneath this model. Also, remember, we have with the 4-team chair model, we have one of those team chairs that does all the out-of-district coordinating. So to say that right now they're all straight team chairs and that's all they do, that's not the case. They're doing other responsibilities, or they're not full-time.
They're not full-time in the district,
That's right.
There's
One of them
one.
in particular is a
One
.7,
that's,
I think.
the .7.
Yeah.
She does mobile.
So under this model, they would each have a caseload of about 100, and they would be doing just team chair work, just the coordinating of the teams and that whole process. They would not be teaching classes.
But they're Unit A, so they don't evaluate.
Correct.
That's right.
They are not the liaison to the student, so they're not even writing the IEPs. Those are submitted to them from the special ed teacher, essentially.
Right, so
Correct
that
me
was
if I'm
I
wrong.
guess
They're
that was
part
my
of that
question with this
process.
number. are they responsible for,
They don't single-handedly writing the ed plans, but they're part of that work.
But so taking away this year, everything you're referring to is the team chair that's overseeing the high school chose to keep teaching her special ed classes and is interimly taking Jill's spot because Jill is the interim
Yep.
special ed. But looking at this page, to be fair, it is a full-time high school and out of district team chair that we would be restructuring. So in years past, that teaching that's going on has never been that scenario before.
At the high school.
Right. And the elementary ones, one is part-time. Does the middle school team chair teach
Yes, actually, I think she does.
special ed?
For some reason, I think it's 2 sections, but I can find that out. But I do think she's teaching.
But not having them in the unit really restricts other things that they could possibly do.
Yeah, they certainly they cannot evaluate.
No.
Right. Yep.
I guess I would like to get some comparison. I mean, I only have one comparison, it's what I live. This seems very heavy compared to what I'm used to, but again, I would like to see, kind of feel out some other things. But for me, I think we will be, as we get into this budget process, be asked to be, as frugal as possible, and I think adding another administrative position puts us in a bad spot,
Well, I do want to say this, though.
even if there's a shift.
I won't set someone up to fail. And so I'm not going to design a position that's not doable. I won't do it. So we do have to have that very candid conversation, because I don't see, and I'm going to be very frank, I do not see one person being able to do all of those responsibilities with no assistance. I just don't.
So previous, the ELL, and I believe our previous assistant was overseeing those. It wasn't being done by the special ed director.
Our assistant superintendent?
Our assistant was,
Which we had in addition to a business manager.
Correct.
Correct.
I just want to be clear about that.
no,
Yeah.
correct.
we
So,
went in a different
so with that
direction.
being said, with this page you gave us about how the numbers break down,
Yeah.
Tammy, I think if we can take summer and actually make it part of this, that would decrease the increase at the bottom of the third line.
Right, right.
And because I feel that the 12-month position would still fall within the range that you had listed here. And we'd be able to make this increase a little less by taking
Right,
that
with the
summer
stipend.
and
You know the
adding.
number for ESY, Jason?
I don't have enough.
It's
I can
about
get it, though.
7,000. It's, well, that,
7,000?
for just that.
Oh, for the summer, you mean for the
The
summer program?
director, right, it's about 5,000 to 7,000.
I can find that easy enough.
I think with the way you've laid this out, I think we do have a good way to support it. Tammy, like you're saying, like, I don't see how financially, I feel like we can say, this is how we spent our money. And I think it looks like we're getting more for our money
Yeah.
in that column. However, just the administrator position alone makes everyone
Get
Sure.
nervous.
Yeah.
Right.
see
I get that.
red
But
spots.
I also think anybody who has been serviced by the special ed program within the last 2 or 3 years would probably appreciate seeing more structure and
Right,
more.
we've said to Jason
Yeah,
from day one.
we need to fix this.
Needs help.
Right.
Yeah.
And doing the same thing isn't going to work.
Correct.
So, I mean, to be fair, and to be honest, I'm a little excited that it's not costing us a full salary. It's, and it looks like it's something that could
Yeah.
possibly be implemented, but
With some
again,
quarter
with
turns
a
to
little
the,
change in the
Shift and adjust.
duties and job descriptions.
Just so, is there a job description for the team chair positions?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
If I get that,
Yep.
just to have a better understanding of what they're doing.
Yeah, I can send that to everybody at our Friday update if you'd all like to see it.
Be good to see.
Sure. Yeah, and I think for me, and I think one of the things I know we've tried to underscore where we have a smaller district, that is absolutely a strength in some aspects, but it's a challenge because we don't have 400 ELL students, but we do have 60. Actually, we tested, I think, 56 last year on our access exam, and we have to test every single ELL student. So, all of the work in the support services and the structures and the systems to support those kids and the reporting, all of that still has to be done. That doesn't go away because we only have 50.
200.
Right, it doesn't matter. We still have to do it, right? And so it's the same level of reporting and support work that needs to be done from that perspective. We need less teachers in that area, right? We have 2.5 or 2.6. And so, that's the other side of it. We don't need as much direct service because we have fewer kids, but that other piece is still there.
But they, on the back end, if you look at their job description, have been doing a lot of the work for the ELO program, which has justified the 2.5, I believe. At least what was presented to us.
Yeah, and which is,
That's where the work was being done.
and I would state, I think very clearly, we need a very different look. Yep, with that. So we're in compliance. Yep.
I think that was pointed out in,
Yeah.
Anyone else have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? All right. This will be on our February agenda for taking action of
Yes.
some sort. I think it's important that we do that. As we all know, and we learned last year, the sooner we jump on job searches, if that's where we're going, the better our candidate pool is, so.
Yeah, and right now, we're up against six other districts in our area that are posted for special ed directors. Not to mention a couple that I'm aware of that have not posted yet.
so do you feel like with the feedback you've gotten tonight and other days speaking to us, you have something to work with here?
Absolutely.
Or,
I do. Yeah, I think this was really helpful.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, you're on, or Matt's on, or whoever is on.
Actually, our elementary principals
go.
are going to be on in just a moment. I'm going to take a second to just kind of frame out the discussion we're going to have tonight. This is a first in our series of budget workshops, and I know we're really excited about this. We, as we've stated a few times, are really looking forward to a very positive budget cycle. It doesn't mean it won't be challenging and it won't be difficult, and it doesn't mean that we won't have to make hard decisions, but I do think that as we have started to put together our district improvement strategy, and we've outlined our 4 kind of strategic improvement areas around the curriculum, instruction, the whole child, the community, and the work that needs to happen in each one of those spaces, and then working with our cost center managers and principals to really build a fiscal plan that matches our academic plan, which I'm sure at this point the committee is tired of hearing me say, but I think we will be in for a very different budget cycle. We are taking a very positive attitude towards this, and instead of taking the approach of, well, what are we cutting, right? We're taking a very different approach. We are taking the approach of, well, what do we prioritize? And while that might sound subtle, it's actually fairly significant, because we know now that we have a district improvement strategy, we know what our data has been telling us about how our kids are performing. We have a better sense at this point of where we're trying to go as a district, although we're still building out that district improvement plan driven by the strategy. We are going to hear from our cost center managers and our principals about how they have built their budgets from the ground up to really align with the needs of children and teachers. And so I'm really excited about this process, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from the principals this evening and then those in subsequent meetings. But with that, I just want to go over the format of this and how this is going to look. And so in front of you and on the screen, you will see we have a different kind of structure to this. So we essentially created a very basic table that has 2 columns. And so one is listed as the 18-19 existing materials or existing staff. And you'll notice it says see detailed spreadsheet, and we've attached those spreadsheets for each cost center, so you can see all of the expenditures within that cost center right now, and all of them that were built into the budget from last year. And then on the right column, you will see new materials and new staff. So you do not have to hunt and peck through any of this. We pulled it right up to the surface by school, and we attached the dollar sign to it. Yes.
So I'll ask a general question instead of asking it of every single principal. When we're looking at existing materials, so we're looking at this lovely, lovely spreadsheet, was any thought process given to the, we have priorities, we want to go for some of these new materials, new items, but maybe these things we had before were not priorities and they can be removed from the list?
Yes, so actually, Matt will tackle
That is exactly the process that we followed. So the level services budget
great
that
question.
is included in there, and that is a terrific question, I thank you. Dr. DeFalco and I were having this conversation just the other day.
at length.
At length.
Yes.
The level services budget is based on the FY19 budget upgraded to reflect next year's rates. So there is a 2.5% increase on the stuff and the fixed costs like electricity and the copier leases, and then there are steps put in for Unit A, as we've said. There is not a percentage increase in that budget for Unit A. There are steps and percentage for Unit C. The zero-based budget started with nothing. We did not hand the principals the FY19 budget and say, here's what you have, now tell us what else you want. The zero-based budget started with exactly nothing. The principals were given their lines. They were given the materials, the places where they could order from. They spoke to their faculty, they spoke to their custodial staff, they spoke to their administrative assistants on what was needed to run the building, and they built it from the bottom up. So anything that was not needed, that might have been included in the level services budget, is not reflected in the zero-based budget.
So it's not in this already?
No. However, in your package, I included both the zero-based budget to see what the principals will be discussing this evening, and where you see, quote-unquote, see the detailed spreadsheet for existing materials, that level services budget is also included. So that would be where all of the costs that we currently are expending would be found in the second. So there's actually 9 sheets for each school. The first 3 sheets are their presentation. The second 3 sheets are the zero-based budget in detail. And then if you go 3 more back, there'll be a title on the top that says level services. So you'll see level services Millville, level services JFK.
So the one without a title is zero-based.
Is zero-based.
I'm with you now, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
So with that, why don't we have our elementary principals join us? Thank you for being here.
And waiting patiently for us to get to you.
And we will start with AFM. And so, Ms. Brown.
Thank you. So you just heard the process that we went through. We have spent a lot of time, many, many hours together, working on our budget. So what you will see in the presentation is that some of the things that I have, Kennedy and Millville will also have. So for those items, those priorities, I'll invite my colleagues to chime in if you would like, just to talk about the rationale behind it.
And there are a lot of things, since our buildings aren't connected, they're, custodial, for example. It's hard to split, okay, where do you use the floor mopper and where do you not? So we kind of split the cost. You'll see it's extremely parallel as you go through.
So as we developed our list of priorities, first and foremost, we kept in mind our students and student learning and meeting the needs of all students, and what does that look like, and what is it that we need to have to do that. So we started with technology by reaching out to teachers and talking about what they've used in the past and have found that it really has enhanced learning. So we have the IXL subscription, Discovery Ed, Brain Pop, and really those are used quite frequently. And the beauty behind these is that we can actually go in and we can look to see how often these are accessed. And so we have a pretty high user rate for these in the past. So teachers had really felt that it added to the instruction, to the learning experience for students. These, though, will appear in the technology budget. In talking with Mr. Bozan, we realized that if we took a look at some of these items district-wide, the cost, there's a benefit to that. So those will appear in his budget. Is there anything you want
And actually, as I looked at it, the AFN page, and you put the John F. Kennedy page next to it, somehow the IXL 17,232, that's not just for JFK. That's K through 12.
Right.
So I'm not sure how that would apportion out by building, but that's the entire district-wide. Same thing with the Discovery Ed for 8,000 and Brain Pop for 8,000.
Millville has the same numbers. We just took it from the district-wide sheet. So.
And then just on to Mrs. Carty, our technology teacher, had a request for Fab at School Maker license. I believe that she had received a grant
She
for
received a
that.
grant. It's $2,000 typically, and she received a grant, and it's for the first few years, it's $500. So this year, we're paying for it out of our principal's accounts for her because her subscription just ended. And actually, I walked into her using it today with first graders. And the first graders were using it, and they wrote a little story about robots and in technology, and then they were creating the robot that they drew as a robot that could help with the earth. And they took the robot that they drew in their story and were creating it with different shapes in this Fab at School, and then they're going to print them out. And some of them, I've used it with her last year as a classroom teacher, and we created as an extension for my students that were needed an enrichment activity. They would go in and create shapes, and then we're able to print them out and cut them out and make them into 3D. So they really enjoyed having those 3D shapes that they created using different things. So that was that program.
And again, that was, so the cost of the district is about $500, 170 times 3, but we got a matching $1,500 grant for that. So we got $2,000 bang out of $500. Actually, I was thinking my kindergarten STEM group, they read a story around Halloween about a square pumpkin. And what they then did is they went on with software and they made a square pumpkin. It's called a net. They fold it up and it makes a three-dimensional shape. So they made square pumpkins. It was pretty neat. It was great to watch the kindergarten students making this. It was really impressive. So, thank you, Jesse.
Moving on to the interventions materials request, I reached out to teachers, and I can tell you that I want to preface this by saying that, we now use our STAR assessment. So we have ongoing STAR assessments and Fountas and Pinnell reading assessments, which enable us to pinpoint specific skills and areas of need for our students, and also areas of strength. We're focusing on high-quality instruction, which will support 100% of our students to demonstrate growth. I mean, that is our focus. That is our goal, and what we are sorely lacking are those intervention materials for students. And Dr. DeFalco had referenced earlier this year, and Dr. DeFalco, if you would help me with the number, I think I have it here somewhere, the percentage of third graders leaving 42%
42% at grade level. Yeah.
42%. We have struggling readers. Nothing magical happens at the end of second grade as they enter third grade, and all of a sudden, we flip a switch and now they can read to learn. We need to continue with that word study work. We need to continue supporting students in their efforts. So, it's about taking a look at what we're doing, certainly K through 5. But what we do know is this, that we still need to continue that work with students, and we don't have the materials to do so. So if we are committing ourselves to supporting students in the way that they deserve, we need to make sure that we have the resources and the materials.
So Fundation is a company, it's a brand?
It's a name of,
Phonics.
it's a phonics program.
It's a phonics
And
program.
it's used currently by the reading specialist.
Well,
Or-
Foundations is actually currently used for students in grades K through 2.
But what we're finding, though, is some of the, beyond grade 2, some of the students still need it.
Still need it.
Which is why it's whole class instruction for K1 and 2. But then by grade 3, it's primarily used by the grade 3 students who are in a pullout. So, which is why we're only buying a small amount, because just the pullout teachers need that. It's not the, but again, it's whole class K1, 2.
Right. And so you'll see a list of intervention materials listed there. So I did meet with, excuse me, my reading specialist and my special education teachers, and also my classroom teachers, specifically grade 3 teachers. We're looking at finding ways to work with students during our response to intervention time, which is scheduled daily. And we're finding that from grade level to grade level, there's an inconsistency with the type of support that we're providing because there's an inconsistency in the materials that we have. So, Steve has been very kind to lend us some of the materials that he has, and that's because they're really available because of the number of sections of classrooms that he has. So if those classroom sections, if the number of sections increase, we have to give those back. They're just on borrow. So we just need to be able to have access to what it is we know that students need, and we know what they need because of the STAR assessment and the F&Ps that we've been conducting. So we've got the assessment tool, and that has been really powerful, and we're really making great use of that. So we've identified these areas. So we're kind of at the
So what now? What?
Yeah. Now what? Now what do we do? So it's wonderful to have these assessment tools, but we need to be able to support students, and we're just really very much struggling to do so.
Can I add one thing, Ms. Brown, on that too?
Certainly
Just, you noted down here in some of your rationale, I just want to remind everybody that underneath the new accountability structure through the Department of Education, we're not only accountable for making sure that all kids move and meet their targets, but we are also double counted for the bottom 25% of student performance. So we have to make sure, right, so the idea is that the accountability system lifts the floor, so to speak, and will raise achievement all the way through that. But we are also double counted on the students that are in that bottom 25% because we also have a separate accountability system just for those bottom 25% of performers. So we have to target those kids in addition.
Right. So, the process moving forward with those students who are in that 25%, I'm meeting with teachers, and we're actually identifying areas of like 2 to 3 skills where we really need to determine what types of interventions we have to provide to boost that. It's really about filling up those holes in those foundational skills that they're severely lacking. So we're looking at students who are struggling. They move on to a grade level. We're asking them to master those grade level skills plus get caught up. And every year that we're not able to fill those holes in those foundational skills, they're really falling further and further behind. So we're asking students who are struggling the most to make an incredible amount of progress.
And I'd like to jump in on that. We have PLCs, professional learning communities, and I actually met with my grade 1 team today. And what we did is we have a big data wall where we have things color-coded how the students are doing. And it was exciting to see a lot of the things move, with the exception of our lowest level. Very few of them actually moved. So what happened is they all made growth, but it's like starting a race 100 yards behind. Yeah, you're making growth, but they're still ahead of you. You're not going to catch them. So they have to make up the normal growth, plus they have to get caught up at the same time. And we don't have the intervention materials yet. So that's why you see this in here. But a lot of the students who are on grade level, they all achieved. Some of them jumped up a level. But our lowest levels were really the struggling ones, because they're expected to make normal growth plus get caught up all in one step. And it was very apparent today when we looked at the data walls.
And I think what we're hearing is that the principals and the teachers are creating really strong systems and structures for supporting kids, monitoring progress, but are wrestling to provide the intervention. It's like diagnosing somebody with an illness, but then you have no medicine to give them. It's
Absolutely.
like, okay, well, we know this is the problem, but
Absolutely.
we don't know how to treat it.
While still expecting them to make that growth.
That's right.
Right.
Do we still have the issue with the reading specialists spending time covering preps instead of?
No.
No, actually, so what we've done is we have purchased a second step program, which is a social emotional curriculum. Our adjustment counselors are now providing, we took away that literacy prep that the reading specialist was teaching, and instead students are receiving guidance, the second step. So, which has, it's done a couple of things. It has freed up our reading teachers now at Maloney to do nothing but, reading support. And it also means that a lot of students who were being pulled from the classroom to join groups with our adjustment counselor, now their needs are being met through this program. So they are now staying in the classroom rather than being pulled. We do still have some groups of students who are meeting with our adjustment counselor, and we're monitoring students very closely, and we know that we're certainly there for students when they need us to be, and we're supporting them. But so we just found that adding that second step program was just it just helped in so many ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's different
yeah.
in Millville, because Millville, our reading specialist is still covering the preps for reading.
Do we not have the program?
But we did free up, so we so we're doing technology every week instead of, we did a reading tech, so we've I flopped around the preps, and so they have one less block of reading in the older grades so that they can have tech every week, so now they're getting, that did free her up some too.
Okay.
So she is able to provide more support. She does also service of roughly 11 to 12 blocks a week of special, between the two teachers.
Okay.
Between the 1.5 or 1.4.
One of the things we did at the JFK AFM complex, we had a part-time teacher that was there. She was like 0.6 or something, and she
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, and I think she retired or resigned or something last year. But we took that same salary and we just made it a full-time position for the same, I think more or less, I think it was the exact same money. So we were able to hire, a newer teacher, but get the teacher full-time. So we were able to increase the sections with that.
And this change with the second step, this just happened at Christmas time. So the first half of the year, we were using the reading specialists as preps. They had a lot of blocks where they could do interventions, but their hands were kind of tied because they had to cover some preps, which was not a great thing. So we made that change at Christmas time. So after Christmas now, the intervention teachers are 100% intervention. They don't see any whole classes any longer.
Right, and so that intervention can be a pull out when needed. It's also push in. And I know that there is some co-teaching going on now during reading with literature circles. So, it's just been a win-win all around. So we're very, very anxious to take a look at, our assessments as we move forward and see the growth.
The program you spoke of for your adjustment counselor, is that in Millville as well?
Millville has done Open Circle for the last, since I started
Okay.
in Millville.
Right.
So we've done Open Circle for a while. So Mrs. Morrow actually goes into 9 of the 11 homeroom and does Open Circle weekly with the kids for about a half hour. So it doesn't, Open Circle doesn't require as much time. It's for the younger grades, it's like 15 to 20 minutes, and for the older grades, it's about 30 minutes. So they're still getting that. And actually, she just started doing a little group of pre-K. So that's fun, too.
Who's trained to do foundations? The foundations is part of Wilson, correct?
It's an offshoot of Wilson, and actually it is whole class in K1 too, so all
Classroom
kindergarten,
teachers.
all first and all second grade teachers have been trained in foundations.
And how about our reading specialists, are they Wilson certified?
No.
No.
No, and
Talked about that at some
that's right.
point.
Yeah, and in the budget, you'll see the request to add a actual Wilson cohort, so that we would have, at minimum, one teacher in each of the buildings Wilson certified by the end of next year. It's a long process, but, yeah, desperately needed, for sure.
And I know one of my special education teachers did ask for that, and
Yeah.
that's something she's been asking for years, so she's very excited that it's in the budget this year, because to service her kids, to provide interventions for those kiddos, she needs that extra training, which she doesn't have. Some teachers have done it on their own and paid for it on their own, but it's a very costly, and it's a very time-consuming.
I just hope when special educators get certified that it doesn't wipe out the second scoop of intervention. So I know in our district, we struggle because once a special educator is certified, suddenly the reading interventionist says, oh, he's yours now. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. So three scoops of intervention.
It's funny,
right.
similarly,
For an
when we were
IEP.
talking about the bottom 25%, the lowest performing 25%, when I was talking with my grades 3 through 5 teachers and then the special education teacher, we were talking about how possibly next year we can look at scheduling differently, so we're not doing, and they were saying this is their biggest issue, is we're taking the kiddos out of the classes with their peers when we should be giving them extra doses of it. So that's
Yeah.
something we want to look at for next year for our scheduling purposes, so that maybe there's something that they can miss some time out of that would be more beneficial for them to have that extra services, so, or those extra doses.
Yeah, if it's core plus more, then you can't do the more during the core time.
Right.
Take the kids out of it, otherwise you're just, right, what are you getting?
Right.
Yeah, you're missing the core instruction.
So when we talk about intervention and supporting students, it's about more than just purchasing materials. It's about everything that we've been talking about. So it's very complex, and it's going to take some time, and it needs to be very well thought out, for sure. Okay, move on? All right. We also, priority also is the nonfiction science text request. This year, teachers are working, we've started our curriculum review cycle for science, and so we have a group of teachers who are working on that. And we had actually had this discussion last year, that we really do not have any nonfiction science texts. At this point, it's a little difficult to determine exactly what it is we'll need because that curriculum work hasn't been completed yet. But we're looking, I know that Steve and Christina, they've been
Yeah,
sharing
it's the UBD curriculum design model, actually, understanding by design. So basically, we begin with the end, and we work backwards from there. So we're not to the point yet where we have selected a science program. So that's why we don't. You'll see that later, and we don't have an exact dollar figure in that. But bottom line is, we don't have science nonfiction text.
And our consultant that we're working with from Teachers 21 has brought in some nonfiction science textbooks, so when the teachers are writing the units, they're able to look at those books and see if it's something that they find beneficial for the units they're writing, and they're writing down the ones that they really like, they're adding into them. So so that's been great, because now we have sample resources, and the teachers can actually try them out before you buy it. Try it on before you buy it, so.
And last year, I know we had talked about this, and we had decided to sort of put it on hold because we knew we weren't ready, and we didn't want to buy books for the sake of buying books. So,
But you don't have any science books at all? Like, I mean,
As far
like
as
science
textbooks, they're old.
oh my gosh,
They're
yeah.
really old. They're probably the same ones. I've started in the district 17 years ago, and they're probably the same ones.
That's why we started with the process with science, the curriculum development process, because we're 2 years behind the next generation. Yeah, science standards, and we've got a math program in place, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, we have a program in place, and we've got, I would say, loose reading in place in terms of the reader's workshop. And I know the principals are working really hard with the teachers on really beefing up the writing end of that. Good readers make good writers, and good writers make good readers. And so we're really focused on that. The teachers did the Johns Hopkins survey on the curriculum piece on Friday. They all took it in terms of the resources they're using. So we're starting to get our arms around that information. But so we chose, as the committee knows, intentionally to start with science. It's just such a huge gap. And you can see it in our results. 29% of 8th graders were meeting state expectations, and 49% of 5th graders.
And it is definitely something that teachers wanted. Teachers, I mean, I had, when the Next Generation NGSS came out, I started teaching them, but it's very overwhelming, and it's a lot more hands-on, and it's unfamiliar territory. And when you have nothing to teach it, it's very hard to jump into it. So I think the teachers have been saying, you know, how can we do this? And teachers are still slowly taking baby steps, so they're excited to see what we're coming up with for this year.
I think now what's been happening is teachers have been doing everything that they can, so we're finding inconsistencies.
Sure.
And so, you know, we know, and I'll even go back to the intervention piece and the Wilson piece, inconsistencies. We have to have a consistent support piece in place for students from one year to the next. And, you know, with science, it's so very important that we are consistent, not just within a grade level in one building, but within 2 buildings. So, you know, it's been an enormous amount of work, but long overdue, and very welcome to have the opportunity to do it. I think we all put in our budget the new curriculum resources for ELA and math. So there will be a curriculum review cycle that will be starting next year.
That's right. Yep.
For ELA and math. Next, you'll see leveled library books. A couple of things going on here. We have not ordered books for our library for at least 9 years since I've been here. Not a book. We've gotten donations of books, and we've repaired the bindings, we've taped them, and we put them on the shelves. But one of the things that we know is that students are feeling as though a lot of the literature that we have on our shelves don't really represent their lives today. And they can't make connections between the literature that we have for them and their lives. And we know how very important that is for them to have an identity. And so in talking with Mrs. Barbado, who is our library paraprofessional, you know, we talked a lot about the need. So we would like to be able to order some additional books for our library. Some of them may be leveled. We may piggyback with the science. We may piggyback with the ELA. But it's just so important for our kids to you know, so our focus, we have such an enormous focus on reading, and we want students to learn to love reading and understand that it has value, and put down those electronic devices and pick up a book. And if we don't have the books in our library to entice kids and get them interested, it's just not going to happen. So, you know, I certainly consider that a priority.
And just to echo what Carol had mentioned, we recently surveyed our students. We surveyed the faculty in addition to that, but and it was over 50% of our kids said they do not see themselves reflected in any of the literature that they're reading. And so that's important, because those text-to-self connections are huge if we're trying to get kids to really develop that love of literacy. And that was grades 3 through the high school we actually surveyed. Or was it did second grade do it?
I think 2 through.
Yeah, 2 through. I
Yeah,
think it was 2 through.
2 through.
That's huge feedback from the kids, right? Directly from, we had over 1,000 kids take the survey.
Moving on to custodial I see you're thinking. Do you want me to wait? Okay.
You did go right in. But the custodial things, all these materials you see, I have half and Carol has half. And these were taken right from, you know, Dennis LaRose, our head custodian. He suggested a lot of these things. And a lot of these things are replacing ancient equipment. You know, one of the things we keep telling him is, you know, work smarter, not harder, because he's working with broken equipment and missing things. And
Duct
it's-
taped.
Yeah, so every one of these is warranted. We could have tripled this, I'm sure, if we wanted to, but you see, like you know, I have half a snow blower and Carol has half a snow blower.
I'd like to see what happens.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if you line those up, that's how that plays out.
How about the hand dryers? One has 2, one has 4. Is that intentional, or did you forget to split?
I think that is a total of 4, you're right, so it
Total of
should be
4,
2 and
yeah.
2,
I-
yeah.
Yeah.
It was
2
the
and 2.
same price, so I thought maybe someone found a better deal.
We're
gonna go with that vendor.
Yeah, you're right, that's
Okay,
2 and
just
2.
checking.
Good,
Yeah.
good catch,
Yeah.
good catch.
And then moving on, I don't know how many of you are aware, but the Maloney School we have no telephones in our classrooms. And the only way to communicate with the classroom is through the intercom. And we have found out over time that we don't really know when an intercom is not working until we try to reach a classroom and it's not working, or we hear them say to us, "We've tried to reach the office, and why aren't you answering?" Well, we didn't know you were calling. And you know, I don't want to make light of the situation because it's actually very serious. We need to be able to communicate with classrooms. We do have some walkie-talkies that we use to go out for recess. We have walkie-talkies for students who may have, some health concerns. But we don't have a way to communicate with every staff member. So I put them in because I can't, in all good conscience, just know that there might be a time when we can't communicate with someone and we need to.
But on the JFK side, we do have functioning telephones.
So you
Actually,
have
we're right there, though, we have no spares. So we have
The
a couple
actual
vacant
phone, or is it
rooms
the
that.
wiring through the building? Like, what has incapacitated the phone?
We have had an electrician come in, and there there are some that we just can't figure out why they're not working.
I'd like to just jump in for a second. Carol and I discussed earlier, there also are some district expenses, as we mentioned. One of the priorities of the district on a facilities side of things, certainly not in teaching and learning, but it is important for health and welfare of the students, is a new telephone system.
I was going to say
If,
that.
and
For
if
that
we,
amount
and I
of
will say,
money.
if we end up moving in the direction of replacing an entire district-wide telephone network, then the walkie-talkies would probably be crossed right off.
Like,
Because
is there I'm sorry, go ahead.
We had a technology plan now, it's got to be 5 years old or more now, but, I mean, that voice over, whatever it was called, VoIP, voice over, whatever. But, I mean, we've been talking about that, and it's kind of one of those things that keeps falling by the wayside and the wayside and the wayside. But my sense is, if it's truly a priority and we need to make sure people are in communication, particularly in this day and age when communication is essential, with all of the things, we run and
Yep.
situations that could occur, it seems to me that we need to do this on the grander scale and not a walkie-talkie that somebody has to be responsible for, carry in their back pocket, remember to bring to school.
We
charge
are
them,
in
and have
complete
them.
agreement.
Yeah.
To that end, Mr.
There's a
Bozan and I have been working on a plan. We have bids in from a number of companies and some financing plans that we can structure out so that our intention is, provided that we can get the budget approved, that we'll move forward with redoing the entire the infrastructure of the phone systems across the entire district.
Because I know historically, being a Facebook person, there is often concerns about communication at the high school as far as parents trying to get in or getting the right person or having someone answer the phone, and then the safety from classroom to office up there as well, and I'm sure we'll hear Mike say that, but,
And,
so it does seem like a bigger piece.
We will be presenting that
And
very
I-
specifically in the district level
And if
budget
it's
as
as big
well.
as we think it is, I think this is a town involvement issue as well. I mean, the towns, own those two elementary schools at least, and if we're over the price tag, I think we potentially
We've
are
done
over, I
a
don't
really
know,
nice
but-
job of
Yeah.
getting some good bids, and Matt's really been able to get the costs down significantly.
Yeah, But
And the other thinking is, moving into next year when, when we're looking
there's
at
one-
the
right.
reconfiguration.
Right.
Yeah.
There is no way for the Kennedy side to communicate to the Maloney side.
Correct.
This would
And
remedy
little things-
all of that.
And vice versa, actually.
Little things like that, like, Linda Lee's the admin on my side, and if a student comes in and they need to be dismissed from the AFM side and they're outside at recess, we have no way of contacting them. So someone will run out there and yell,
I
Johnny
do- I mean, I
Jones,
was
you're
gonna
being
say, I
dismissed.
think the
It's
walkie-talkies
amazing.
fill that reset, the
Yeah.
outside of the building or outside of the
Yeah.
classroom type thing,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, different needs,
I
yeah.
was just wondering if there was a newer technology than a walkie-talkie, but I'm sure it's something Sean would be
There's
looking
two cups
into.
and a string. Might be
Don't
able
go
to-
too far.
I just put
Probably better than
Google
what we
in
got.
my- So I can now not yell to my kids up this, I'm still doing it, but, I mean, there are things out there that you know, I would think they'd
If
be
a,
something.
if a Ring doorbell can,
Well, that's
So
what I
you can
mean.
put Alexa in every room.
And, yeah, she could be part of the class.
Until you have kids having Alexa.
We do text. I will tell you that teachers will text me during the day.
Yeah.
I mean, we do that, but
but that's again, still their
absolutely.
usage of their responsibility, it's-
Absolutely.
I mean, we need to
Absolutely.
have a communication system. That's like,
yes,
it's,
But maybe
we're,
better than walkie.
yeah.
yeah, better than walkie-talkies.
Absolutely.
Dream big, Mrs. Brown, dream big.
And I actually think it's closer within our grasp than maybe
Yeah.
we might think, with that. I know when we'll look at the numbers in our meeting, I think it's in February, but that's part of it. So I think it's going to be more doable than maybe we
Yeah.
have initially thought.
And last but not least is my request for shredder. We actually have a tiny little one in the Maloney office, and we actually end up boxing up a lot of materials that need to be shredded, and typically every year we've had a company come and cart our shredding away. So I don't know if that's the plan, but I'm just thinking that if we had something that could handle the amount of shredding we have, we could take care of that ourselves and not have to worry about that, so.
You okay to move to staff? Yeah. Okay.
All right, so again, taking a look at class sizes, certainly a priority. If you look, this year I have 5 sections of grade 3, and I'm at about 25 students per class. I'm proposing that next year we move to 4 sections. The number of students coming from 2nd into 3rd grade are at 87. So if we move to 4 sections, we'll have about 22 students per class. Currently, grade 3, we are at 3 sections, and we're at 30, and we just very happily enrolled a few new students. So we are up to 31 in some of 2 of my classes. So, there's a lot of research out there. Some says that class size doesn't matter, others says it does, and I'm telling you that 31 students in a classroom is it's too large. It is just too large, and I can go into all of the reasons why, but I'm seeing you shake your head, so I think that you understand why that's just, we can't do that. So next year, we'll have our incoming 3rd graders. 3rd grade this year, as I said, is at 5 sections, so I'm proposing that we increase grade 4 to 5 sections next year, which will bring us to about 25 students per class. Grade 5, I am proposing that we remain at 4 sections so that we don't have the class sizes that we do in grade 4 this year at 30, 31. That will bring us to about 23 students per class.
That's a total change, Carol, of just one.
Just one. It will result in the hiring,
Got it.
of 1 FTE.
Saying it for the audience. That we don't have.
I had the -1, the +2.
I was doing
Oh, you
that.
did, you were doing that too? I'm like, read the bottom.
And then, again, I have the position of a .5 instructional coach, which I believe Dr. DeFalco has been
Yes.
discussed, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And I just found a typo. Add .2 teach teacher.
Oh,
Actually, it's a tech teacher. So I think that Steve and I both have that. So what we would endeavor to do is just to provide our students at Kennedy and Maloney with weekly technology instruction versus every other week. We are finding, and in talking to Mrs. Cardy, we're finding that the material that she's able to cover with students at Millville, they're moving at a much faster pace, and think about having technology every other week. You lose a lot between that week, and if it happens to be a vacation week or a Monday when you have tech, sometimes Mrs. Cardy can go a month without seeing students, so it's just really,
So between the 2 schools, you'd have 1 full-time
tech teacher,
That is correct. Yeah.
which only means adding .4 to the,
Yeah, it's a .4 increase, yeah.
And then moving on, we are also proposing that currently we have a full-time nurse and a part-time nurse. So what Steve and I are proposing is that we increase that part-time nurse to full-time. We have visits to the health office can reach 75, and there are days, and I have all of the data that Mrs. Walker, our nurse, put together for us. You know, we have 600 students enrolled. That health office is extremely busy with just kids who come in with all sorts of, injuries or ailments, but we also have students on health plans who have to go to the health office upwards to 3 to 5 times a day for check-ins. We have medications that need to be dispensed. And, I would invite you to come in and walk into that health office on any given day, and there are often 5 to 7 students who are waiting, they're triaging, they're trying to figure out who to see first and dispense meds because you have to do that in a timely manner, and they need to have meds at a certain time. So, I just really feel that that it's just for student safety. That office is just incredibly, incredibly busy, not to mention all of the other responsibilities that nurses have with regard to entering all of that data after they meet with students, the communication that they must have with parents, the communication that they must have with teachers. And they also, Mrs. Walker will attend IEP meetings as indicated, 504 meetings as indicated, just conferences and meetings that we have with parents. Oftentimes she is invited when it's indicated. So we would ask that we consider.
And we're also getting on to the season when we're having field trips. So it's very difficult to get substitute nurses just on a daily basis and then to cover a field trip as well. But I look at, we have 600 students. That makes us the biggest school in the district. We have, there's only like 400 or so in most of the other buildings. And, we really, really need, we have 1.5. So what happens now is Mrs. Walker is there the entire day. And our second nurse, halftime, comes in at 11:30. Because truly, it kind of peaks around lunchtime for medications and also recess injuries and Band-Aids. And the second half of the day typically is very busy. Some of the kids come in somewhat ill as it is, and parents say, well, go to school, see if you can hang in there. The second half of the day is when they are the busiest, typically. Like I said, for the noontime meds, the Band-Aids after recess. So that's why currently our halftime nurse begins at 11:30 and goes to the end of the day. So that would expand, so we'd have 2 nurses there from beginning to end. And they're truly needed, no doubt about that. But the technology, I'll go back after and talk about my homeroom classes, but the technology right now, Monica Carty comes out all the time with my kindergarten, first and second classes, and she's like, oh my gosh, your first grade kids, they are so far behind, just having come from Millville. And she'll say like, some of your first grade kids are still learning how to log on. It's January, and she's telling me how far along they are in Millville. They're so much further, and you just expand it out to the end of the year. It's crazy. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to expand technology. We'll probably work out some type of rotation. I know Dr. Falco met with the BPO today, and they're talking a lot about some STEM classes and some STEM labs and things like that. So we will, the scheduling for that still needs to work out a little bit, but a full-time technology teacher would be great. We need some technology integration as well. So you can't just sort of throw the Chromebooks at the teachers and say, here, go. So we need some technology integration, and right now Monica is running as fast as she can, but she's covering 3 buildings. So we really need to expand. So I think the way it would line up is an additional 0.2 for me and 0.2 for her, so that would make 1.0 at the complex and 0.4 at Millville. But that's definitely needed. If you look at a lot of the other positions, they're kind of parallel.
Steve, did we jump ahead just to your staff?
All right, no,
That's okay, I just want to make sure we follow
You can
along
do the
here.
building stuff then, you can do that.
Where do you want to?
Sure. So, anyway, yeah, so sorry,
It's okay.
the first part of ours were similar. I just want to talk about my staff.
Okay.
This past year, I had roughly 95 kindergarten students, and that was divided 5 ways. So we had about 19 in a class. If you look at next year, I have 100 plus, because the way the kindergarten projections are done, they take the 4-year-old census, and we send notifications to all of them, say, hey, come in and register your child for kindergarten. So we always have a few surprises beyond that. Last year, we had 71 students on our census. That ballooned to 95. So right now, we're at 77, and already we're up to 90. So I couldn't project exactly, but I'm guessing that we're going to be over 100 at that point. So I just said 100 divided 5 ways is class size of 20, which is a reasonable class size. Grade 1 and 2. Grade 1, again, you'll just see this year's kindergartners become next year's first graders. So you have 95 in 4 sections, that'll be 24. My grade 2, look at that, 86 students in 3 sections, 29 kids in the class. Physically, it's hard to move in that room. I mean, it's wall-to-wall desks, and the teachers are doing their best in terms of getting kids away from their desks and working on the floor at tables and groups, but it's just too many. It really is. It's difficult to do RTI. It's difficult to give the kids the attention they need. So next year I'm proposing the 86 first graders will be 86 second graders next year. So rather than walking in the same shoes we did this year with 3, I'm proposing an additional grade 2 teacher, which will bring the class sizes down to approximately 22. So seeing what we're experiencing this year in grade 2 with 29 kids in the class, I don't want to repeat that next year.
When we restored positions in the summer, we brought it back to, we did 1 on each
Yeah.
end. So
So my net on
So the
that
2 we
is 1 additional section, and it would be a second grade teacher. But so instead of having 5, 4, 3, next year will be 5, 4, 4 for each grade. So I'm looking for 1 additional grade 2 teacher. And also, one thing we have at the end, if you look at the end of it, right now we have 2 permanent building subs to cover the complex. And there are a lot of times when we don't have bodies to cover rooms. So what Carol and I do every morning, we get on the phone, we're staring at the computers, trying to figure out how we can balance these 2 classes. And we'll do things like, all right, this sub has got a prep at this time. All right, well, okay, they don't need to be in a prep, so we can cover this one. And what happens, the preps that we cannot cover, teachers put in for extra pay because they lost their prep. And that costs us money. So in the long run, actually, I believe it will save us money if we add a 3rd perm sub to the complex, because we won't have to be paying out nearly as much in those lost prep coverages. And obviously, it's better to have a class covered than not. So in terms of the academic impact, that's hard to quantify, but the dollars you can't argue with.
I'm laughing because this has been a conversation in another forum, so. But I think to that point, Jason, can we, once and for all, kind of
do the
get
analysis of the numbers?
some
Yeah.
analysis
Yeah.
of that? Because I think, I've only been here a couple of years, but that building sub comes up every year, and every year it seems like it would be a cost savings, but it tends to be the first thing we cut. So if we could clarify and really get the data that says it saves the money we all think it would, then it's a much easier conversation.
And just the continuity of services as well. It's very disruptive to have a sub, hopscotch from place to place every period. It's very difficult. It really is.
And I think in the other forum, we talked about building subs tend to know all the kids. When you
Absolutely.
have students with IEPs or require some special accommodations, they know just where to pick up, whereas if you have Joe Schmo from the street, they have no idea who Johnny is. They see this accommodation page, they have no idea what to do. So, and oftentimes those subs know the teacher that they're covering for, so they can just really pick up those plans or clarify and know. So there are value, it's
Yeah.
just, it seems to be.
And knowing the classroom routine, as
Right.
simple as, if there's a moment where that they don't have a group of kids or a classroom, they can go in and help in the classrooms, get to know the kids, get to know the routines of the teachers. It's fantastic.
And the economy is getting better. It's harder and harder to find day-to-day subs, whereas if you could say, okay, I can give you a job for 180 days, they will commit, as opposed to, well, I could work at CVS, I could do this, I could do that. I can work alternate Tuesdays type of thing, whereas if you can count on them being there September to June, it's much better situation.
That's a way to build a bench,
Yeah.
a teacher bench.
But
we
any
can do
other,
that
any
analysis.
questions about my staffing? Again, a lot of it is status quo in terms of occupational therapists, speech, things like that. No significant changes there. But again, my big ask, I guess, is for my additional grade 2 teacher and expanding technology, the nurse, and the permanent sub.
Just one question on the kindergarten. Enrollment has opened. Is there like a sort of, do we give a, I know we can't really put a true deadline, but is there an expectation that we,
The day the class.
because I'm more concerned that this number will inflate as much as it did last year.
Yeah.
And then we have 24 kindergartners, 48 shoes to tie, and all of
There
those
is a
things that go
deadline.
with kindergarten.
There
There is
is.
a deadline, but there's still people that come in and register at the very last
You
minute.
can't turn them away.
Oh, right.
They-
It's like
they can
it's a
show up
fake
first day of
deadline.
It's a
but-
requested deadline.
Yes.
What is the requested deadline?
By the person who hasn't done it.
Not to go to 101.
Off the top of my head. Just like last year. It's either beginning of February or beginning
Yeah.
of March.
Yeah.
Are you saying you're up to 90 packets out or turned in?
Well, we have 90 names
Oh, okay.
down. So
the
they're going out and
No,
trickling back in.
census was 77.
Yeah, yeah.
So where did
90
you get
names
90
in.
names?
There were some other people that came in. I don't know if they saw it like on
And
the,
took out a
on the
packet.
website, they saw it on the, on town cable, but yeah, somehow
just driving by.
there was an article in the paper as well, so, yeah.
So that's my
Facebook.
concern. We're only in January.
They're recruiting.
We're in January.
What is Millville? Do you
We
have?
have a
one,
staff
so-
member here that doesn't have her kid in.
Our current census is 16, 17, but last year was 20 and we ended up with 30. So, so we have definitely 4 for sure that have
Not
already come and
accurate,
picked out
but-
packets that were not on our census. So
Yeah.
I mean,
number's gonna go up.
we're expecting that number to go up as well.
It's never lower.
No.
Never lower.
Right.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, except,
But we are clearly hitting very low numbers for kindergarten in I mean, we really clearly are. You know, at
Those
16 or
bubbles kill
17, I
us.
realize the census will go up, but the fact that there's only 16 or 17
Right.
counted
Still
kids, that's pretty low.
The fact that they're in kindergarten this year is,
Regional?
So mine's gonna be a little faster because they already covered a lot of it.
There you
So, so I do have some of the same things with the science for the leveled book room, leveled library. I'm looking at 2 places for the leveled library. In our library, I know MESPA has been wonderful and they've had Scholastic dollars that they've bought books for our library because we haven't bought books in many, many years as well. Also, our book rooms that the teachers pull books from, we could use a little more diversity as well, as Carol said. Some of them are, when we got rid of old reading series, we took all the readers that were in like the Houghton Mifflin or whatever reading series, and we took all those little individual readers and we leveled them all, and then we put them in the book rooms. So those are in book bins for the teachers to take for the kids, but it would be nice to have a variety of books for the kids to read as well. I have the new math and ELA curriculum. As Carol said, we're going through a review cycle for math and ELA next year, so we'll potentially need some new materials for that. Our custodial requests, I spoke with Greenie, and we have a snowblower. So our youngest snowblower right now is 12 years old. Our oldest one is since the building was 20-something years, 27 years, I believe he told me, and one of them, they run with a string. So that's the one we're looking to get rid of, the 27-year-old one right now, that they have a string attached to it and to help it function. So that's what one of the things we're looking to replace, because
Just the string or the whole snowblower?
I know.
Jack's wheelhouse.
Jack can handle that.
Maybe we want a
Jack can get you a
colorful
new
string
string,
for
probably
next
pretty
year.
cheap.
They also are looking for dehumidifiers. We use, our custodians use when they clean the floor over the summer, and in the summer in general, the dehumidifiers. And so when the carpets get washed, they don't dry as fast if you don't put the dehumidifiers in. So he's hoping with 3 more dehumidifiers, we can get an entire wing cleaned and dry much faster.
Matt just volunteered to buy those out of his pocket. So there are no issues. We do not want muggy classrooms
I do
this
not
summer.
want muggy
We will have a
classrooms.
plan in place for that, trust me.
So that's part of our, and as I said, the youngest snowblower in our building right now is 12 years old. So, and they do require repairs.
But you need a whole one, not a half.
Yes, I need a whole one, not a half one. The Envisions, so as you'll see in staffing, I'll explain more. We will need a new grade 5 teacher manual for Envisions because we'll have another teacher teaching, as I explained down further. Tech stuff is the same as Carol and Steve had. We're going to split the fab at schools, and she also wanted cardstock to be able to print some of those things out that they're making on fab at school, because obviously the paper's not as durable as being able to fold a shape with cardstock. So our reading teacher, Mrs. Allard, had requested, as part of intervention and kind of another way to pull kids in, she would like 6 Fire tablets, the Kids Edition, because she can add the Amazon Kindle app to it, so they can use books on there. But also was looking at different apps to help, Starfall and a few others to help with interventions for reading. So to get those kids on other devices to practice things, like during her reading classes, she can have centers and stuff. And she's found a bunch of apps, and she's listed them all for me when I've asked for them. And there were just so many of them that she can get that are free, that don't cost money. So that's the big part. She had also asked for diverse books, and this is something that Dr. DeFalco brought up, is, we have a lot of generic, just very basic books, and they're older. And she wants books to teach kids about diversity, religious diversity, cultural diversity, any kind of diversity, just to get these kids realizing that not everybody is exactly the same, and how we can have empathy for readers as we're reading about them, how we can become more empathetic in our lives. She's also asking for more biographies. So she does a unit, I can't remember exactly which grade it is, but they do a lot of study with biographies. She's looking for some for Jane Goodall and Malala, and so there's several different biographies to study more with the kids. And she would like a Fountas and Pinnell kit number 1. She has kit number 2, but borrows everybody's kit number 1, so she needs to go to the lower grade teachers to borrow, okay, I need this book to assess this kid. So then she's often either the teacher that doesn't have it at the current time, or she has to go find someone else that has it if they're using it. So she would like her own kit to help assess, and this is a lot with her Title I kids. She's needing the lower kit for the Title I kid she has, so she would like to use that as well. And then for technology, it's the same stuff that we discussed earlier, IXL. When I had asked staff things that they would find them beneficial for them in the classroom, I think almost every grade told me IXL and or BrainPop. They use them as enrichment to their lessons. They also use them as activators. They use them for just a variety of things. Sometimes people use them even as centers to help with the instruction that they have. So it's basically supporting and reinforcing everything that they're going over with the kids. So they had asked for that. And then for staffing, as you know, this year we had the multi-grade classroom. So we currently have 2 3-4s and a 2-3. So we had asked that we had discussed this model for 2 years because currently the grade 2-3 multi-age classroom is learning the 3rd grade science and social studies curriculum. Next year, that group will learn the 2nd grade. So the kiddos that are in 2nd grade, which will be in 3rd grade next year, will learn the grade 2. So they'll have 2 and 3. I have like a matrix right now to figure out make sure everybody's learning the correct curriculum by the time they leave 5th grade. So it may just be in a different order than their peers, but by the time they leave 5th grade, they'll have all the curriculum they need.
And we need to do a 2nd year of this to close the loop.
Right,
I just want to make sure that,
the gap, yes.
That's really important.
So, currently, pre-K, our classes are 25, 36, and 7. And obviously, some of our pre-K enrollment is depending upon IEPs and students that need extra services. So those numbers will fluctuate. And we are right now accepting pre-K packets. So those are available as well for people to take out, and they've been advertised. So that enrollment, and you'll see we have 2.5 because we have, in November, we hired a new classroom with the morning is preschool, and the afternoon is a pre-K K1 model. So that's what's adjusted in the pre-K classroom with the 0.5 as well. So currently that room's holding 3 with some personnel, and then the hope is they'll be using around those same numbers next year. Kindergarten right now is 28. It is difficult. She does have 2 paraprofessionals. One is there all day long. One is there 3/4 of a day, so she's there from 8 to 4.5 hours every day. I'm proposing next year for 2, barring the numbers 30. She is doing a lot of good work. And she does some days, like, some days when I'm having a bad day, I go on these other forums and I'm seeing what other people have, and she was just not awful, and so if we are at 30, I would like to see us with 2 classrooms. It's just
So you're saying 2, so it would have 15 students
15 in a
each.
class, yes. Sorry, that's if we have about 30 students. So grade 1, over the last, I had Mrs. O'Neill look at the data for the last 2 years, so this summer of 17 and the summer of 18, we've had both years 3 new students move in first grade. So assuming those numbers are going to be the same again, about that, we'd be looking at 31 kids if we had 1 class of first grade. So I'm proposing 2 classes with 16, 15, depending on where we get numbers. Obviously, grade 1 is the basis of and the foundation of their learning. So obviously, we want to keep those class sizes lower.
Okay, I'm going to stop you.
Yes.
Because this is my, I don't disagree with anything that you have said, nor anything that you have said, and I think we have some major issues. I cannot compare 16 possibly to 24. It's apples and oranges, and I know Millville has the lower reading scores, and I know we need to bring the folks up, and I know all of those arguments, but as a taxpayer who pays my fair share portion, it does not seem fair to me that 1 grade gets to have 16 and 1 teacher gets to have 24 with no additional supports. I mean, yes, we had them when there were 30.
Just to clarify, you're talking 24 in Blackstone or 24 in 2nd grade?
No, 24 in Blackstone at first grade. Steve, that's why I just went back.
Yep.
And
as
Steve,
soon as she-
It's Mrs. Schaefer's fault, though.
I'm putting it out to the whole table.
Yeah, I
Like,
think you're
I'm
saying
putting
globally, too.
To the whole table, to the whole of
Yeah.
us.
That's right.
How do we solve this problem?
And that's something that when I'm looking at numbers, it's a very hard sell. Because if we don't have 30, it's going to, in kindergarten, I can't feasibly say 14 kids in a class.
I'm going to say something we already all know. We need to look at this regional agreement.
Thank you.
And, I don't think it's anything that we haven't already said, in many different venues and times, because Jane, you are 100% correct.
Absolutely.
For now,
Because
but
in
not
the same
forever.
respect, I want to give Mrs. Schaefer a lot of credit for correcting that problem last year. That's why we have what we have in
That's why
place.
we have what we have.
And
Right.
I feel like if there was anyone that was going to be able to look at this and solve the 16 in first
Yeah.
grade, she would have been sitting here presenting it right now.
She has done a fabulous
But
job
knowing
of dealing with
that
that.
we didn't do the looping last year in first
Yep.
grade because it was first grade,
Right.
that
Yep.
I feel
And that's what.
Yeah, I'm taking nothing against your
No, I know.
numbers, everybody's support. I'm just saying, we
need,
have
as a
to,
district.
as a school committee, not say our hands are tied. We have to untie our hands. We have to get this community, these 2 district of 1, to realize we have to do something different. We absolutely have to do something different. It's not about money.
Agree.
It is not about, it is about educating, every 3rd sentences has been, we're inconsistent,
Yeah.
we start off inconsistent.
Educational equity.
We just know in that process we'll be incredibly thorough. We would do our due diligence, but we can move at a healthy pace. I'm not going to say accelerated because that can involve work that isn't as thorough and deep as we need to, but we can move at a pace, the pace in which we need to get this in place. I think the question that we have to answer is, when do we want to start that process? Right?
like
So
to
I think
start it
that's what, I mean, it's January, so I think I think there's two ways to look at this. And I know we haven't had any of these conversations this frank, but, I think to just put it on the table, I think there are two ways that we need to really unpack this. Do we want this to, in somehow, way, shape, or form, impact this budget cycle? Or do we want to get through this budget cycle, living with what it is we just said and the situation we have, and take this issue head-on once the budget cycle is complete? I think there are I really think those are the two things we need to answer.
We tried it last time at the same time as budget, and I think that was some of the problem.
Might I ask when in that process we started? When in the budget process did we start that work?
Yeah, we started very early on, but we started an approach from changing the structure of the elementary system. We didn't start from an approach of changing the governance structure and regional system of the district. So we didn't start from an approach of, we have an agreement between two towns, what does the agreement look like, how is it organized, how do we educate our children in the district? We looked at very specific, second graders will go here, third graders will go here, fourth graders will go here. We need to not go from that approach. We need to go from the approach of, we have 1,200 students, or however many, how many we got?
1,800.
1,800 students. How do we govern the district? Because that's what the regional agreement is. It's a governance thing. It is not a management of your classroom thing. It is not. It is a governance thing. So how do we govern the district with a school committee at charge reporting to two towns to educate all of the people so we see gains for all of the students in this district across the board?
Once that's set, then we can set the structure
Correct.
of, yeah.
One major difference here is we have a superintendent asking and supporting it, where in the past it was the committee's work that was being done. One major question I would have, if it was something you were talking about that would be done during this budget cycle, is how would that impact the grades in Millville, because we needed that 2-year commitment.
That's,
So how do
Yeah.
you have to get those third graders their third grade curriculum next year? So I honestly, I think instead of trying to snowplow it in, taking the time for us to get it done and done right, and letting these kids finish this looping might unfortunately be the best way, because it's not, unfortunately, because it won't save the 16 next year. But we could definitely
Right.
get there.
And so I think that, and I
Maybe with
appreciate
more
the
support.
clarity, because I think that's what we're trying to determine, is what is the pace of change that we want to bring that process through.
I
And if-
still think we need to start now, though. I mean,
Right,
this is
starting now
something
and
that's-
working
Yep.
through the year, as opposed to saying we need it on the town floors for May.
Right.
And
Isn't there a clause in the agreement about when we can meet?
No, that is a clause that says if a town wants to educate their own elementary students, K through 6, which we don't even do anymore because that's been changed, they have every 5-year term, they have to bring it up at that point in time.
Okay,
So that's if they choose
If they wanna
to do
withdraw.
their own.
Okay.
That is not for us to say we can or cannot propose changes to the agreement. But I don't think I think as a school committee, I think we have to, this has to be a district of one. This has to be the community, it has to be the finance committees, it has to be the board of selectmen. It has to be everybody who's bringing this to the town, not just a group of 8 or 10.
Yep.
It has to be a unified, this is the best way to govern this district.
which is definitely a process. And
It's definitely a
Oh, for sure.
process, definitely a
Calendar year.
process. But,
and this is the same problem we had this year with our kindergarten. I mean, if you either have one or you have two. You feasibly can't say 14 and 14 is, realistic. So that's kind of the problem
well,
we are with in Millville.
but my feeling too is if you don't bring in those 3 extra that come in.
Exactly.
We are
We're
in the
gonna have to
same
go down to
boat
one.
for first grade.
Right, exactly.
Where we sit with
Which is-
that number, that 30 being the.
Which is where we are now,
Robust.
which is exactly where we are right now.
Right.
Yep.
So, the,
On that note,
On that note,
Very important
Sorry.
discussion to have.
sorry, it just, I
No,
think,
very
I mean,
important. I'm glad you brought it
Jane,
up.
Jane took the lead, but in my mind, I still had my worry about Steve's kindergarten number
Right.
floating up and,
Yeah.
and being in a 25, 30 range of these little
Right.
kindergartners. And then I heard 15, and I was like, this is the
Yeah.
problem.
Right, it is
We would
fun,
love
'cause that's-
15 for all, but
I mean,
that's
we're
probably not going to
28,
happen
19
either.
this year, 28,
Right.
19, so
Right.
that's,
About here at
that is a problem.
His is 20 plus.
So for our,
But this year it's
Inflated by the
reversed,
minute.
where we have 30
Right.
or 29,
28.
and fifth grade's the same way this year,
and
fifth
there's
grade has
19
30.
Blackstone.
Yeah.
But remember,
So,
Just before we leave, can we discuss what we're gonna do to get started on the regional
We
agreement?
can't make it an action, I can tell you what I'm going to do with the list we collected at the last meeting, but we can't make it an action item, it was not on our agenda.
Okay.
But we can have general thoughts fly out there
Okay.
and suggestions, and I would love them. But anyway, we're back to you.
all right. So currently we have, well, let me just keep going with my proposal. So for grade 2 next year, I'm looking at 23 in a classroom. 2, 3 will be 22 total. It'll be 15 second graders and 7 third graders. The 2, 3, 4 classrooms that we currently have will be 14 and 7, so 14 third graders and 7 fourth graders in each classroom, which would be 21. We kind of, my numbers, I kind of left the multi-grade classrooms smaller, a little bit smaller, 1 or 2 smaller, but not significantly smaller, but that's where we left that. The grade 4 would be 23 students. I'm proposing adding a 4-5, which would be 22 students. So my thought, and this could still work with on a 1-year cycle, because there are going to be 5 fourth graders in that classroom. The fourth graders could combine with support in the classroom of 23 in the current grade, in the grade 4 proposal. And that'll be a class of 28 for content. And then they could go back, so that
But-
the grade 4 kiddos would get their grade 4
So
content.
they would get their grade 4 curriculum, and would they get and they'd get their grade 5
By the
curriculum
time they
in
go
the
to fifth
next year?
grade, yes.
But the grade 5, who's already had the 4 curriculum,
Will have
will be
grade
getting
5.
grade 5.
So that way it'll wash out for 1
Have
year.
this in a chart? You have this in a chart?
I literally have a spreadsheet with different. So that way it would only be a 1 year, so that if the regional agreement goes through and everybody will have everything.
So what support do you have from teachers for these multi-level classrooms?
We've found that the 3-4 is moving much smoother than the 2-3 as far as reading. Reading is a little more difficult, because second graders are learning to read still, and third graders are reading to learn. So we're trying to still work on melding that together. So it is a process. They do have PLC once a week that they can, especially for math, they do a lot of looking at the student assessments for math, and they make movements based upon, for flexibly grouping the math, they make movements as needed based upon that. So it is a different amount of work than they're used to. So they have to change their thinking. Every single multi-age classroom has a paraprofessional in it for one reason or the other, and so the paraprofessional is able to provide some support as well to help.
And I realize this is not the time for this discussion, so I apologize before I ask my question.
Okay.
But if there is a parent who has a student in the multi-level classroom and it is not successful for them, in other words, that student is not, they're still in it next year?
Well, they may need some of the content, so that's something we'd have to look at, because the content could be the issue depending on what grade.
Can I ask a question? And I don't have all your charts in front of me, so I could be way wrong, but this year, the 2-3 split
Correct?
is doing third grade content,
Correct.
and the 3-4 splits are doing fourth grade content.
Fourth grade content.
So how do we have that many fourth graders that need content next year? Where are they coming from?
What do you mean?
No, there's only 5.
It should only be the ones that are coming out of the 2-3 that need the fourth grade, because the other third graders that are going to fourth grade have already gotten fourth grade content.
But, so some of the students in the 2-3,
Yep.
Yeah, those kids are moving
the
up.
3-year-olds, the
Third
third
graders.
graders.
Yeah, but there's only 14
We'll
of them.
go,
It's
but
only seven.
remember that
You're talking about 23 plus 5, you're talking about 28 of them that are gonna need fourth grade
21.
content next year.
There's 7 in the first line and 14
There's
in the second line.
7.
Yep.
So 21 third
Hold on, I'm
graders
trying to look at my
currently.
numbers here.
Yep, there's 21 total. Were you thinking the 7 and 7 were?
The kids that are in the 3-4 split
Yes.
They're
have
getting
already
fourth
gotten
grade.
4th grade. So if they stay in the 3-4 split, they need 3rd grade.
Third grade.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Just the third
Yep.
grader.
So the 4th grade, the straight 4th grade, I assume is going to get 4th grade curriculum, and there's 23 in there that need straight 4th grade. 4th grade content.
Yeah, they're going to the 5th grade 23.
Do you see what I'm saying?
No.
Right here, isn't this 4th grade next year?
I think we have to come visit your
23.
chart.
I know.
4th grade next year is going to have 23 kids in the
Yep.
straight, in the
Yes.
straight 4, getting 4th grade content.
Are you asking where are those kids coming from?
Yes. Because
But
if the
she-
3-4
they're not,
have already.
they're going back, she said the 5 and the 4-5 split, the 5 fourth graders
So,
will go.
Hold on, I'm just trying to do the
Make a
math in my
class of
head.
20.
She's, Karen's counting, if I'm understanding
Yeah,
this
no, I
correctly.
know what she's doing, yes.
Karen's counting just straight numbers, right? So when you count the third grade numbers.
Yes.
From this year, you're doing
just
like a
look-
diagonal, then you're looking
Yes.
at them as
Well,
fourth
no, I'm
graders.
trying to figure out that if the 2-3 has done 3rd grade, they need 4th grade next year.
Right, so those
So
people
you've
who are
got-
3 go up to 4.
You've got the 14 third graders
Right.
that need 4th grade, because the 2nd graders in the 2-3 who are going to be 3rd graders are
Yep.
staying in
I
the
see what
2th
you're
grade.
saying.
Yeah, they're in the
We know
loop.
that.
Yes.
So there's only
7
There's only
in that room.
14 in that 2-3 group that could go up, that would need 4th grade content.
Correct.
And
But
then
they
in the
can't go to
3-4s,
3-4 'cause
all
it's
the
doing
3-4s need 3rd grade still.
Right.
So none of them are going to go to a straight 4th grade because they've already gotten 4th grade.
So where do they go?
So
14 right now.
So where, yeah, where do
14
those?
meetings.
I actually
Where are
have
the
my
other
the
9
matrix
kids?
at school. So
They've gotten third grade, not
Yeah.
fourth grade.
Right.
No,
No,
because
they've gotten
These
4th
guys
grade.
got 3rd grade.
They've
These
gotten
guys
4th
got
grade.
4th grade.
There's 9 kids
These
on,
guys
like,
got 3rd
somewhere there's
grade.
9
They
kids
can't
that
go up
shouldn't
here
be
and
there.
get 3rd grade.
I will have Christina clarify that,
I'll
and I'll
look
send
at
it
my
in
matrix.
Friday's update.
And again, I said it,
see the
I
kids.
could be way wrong, but it just, it seems like you've got too many kids
don't know
needing
what's
4th grade that won't need it, unless you're going to add more 2nd graders coming up who are going to jump 3rd grade and end up in 4th grade. Like, you know what I mean? But that starts your cycle again.
So it's, 3 going into 4.
So.
Yeah, and we're not starting a new loop.
No, we're not sitting.
We need to
no,
end
we're
our
not starting-
loops.
Yes, we're not starting a new loop.
End our loops.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'll look into that.
I mean, I can't get the numbers though.
Yeah, and I'll
That's
include
what I
that
was
in the
just
Friday
doing.
update.
All right, thank you.
It'll all be in front of us.
So by this proposal, we're adding potentially with the kindergarten numbers, potentially 2, potentially 1 if we only need 1 kindergarten with the census numbers.
Not to make it more confusing, but I had a question about the fourth,
That's what we wanted to figure
the
out.
4-5 split next year, and then the 5th grade. So the 5th grade of 23, it will be,
Still be stuck with,
there will not, the teacher will be teaching
because it's gonna be.
all the subjects through the 4-5 split. Teacher will be teaching, and it will just be the 5 moving for content? Or are they going, where years past you did the math and ELA?
So
Switch.
the 4-5 needs to be part of the other
They're going
mix.
back?
Yeah, so they
they're
may,
going
for
to
math, they may end up doing everybody.
5th grade?
Like mixed, you know, so like what we do now, 2, 2, 3, and 3, 4, and 4, all mixed for math. Like they have their classes for math. So they have the same math blocks. So 5th grade may be in that block as well, if that's what we decide. We decided as a team, the teachers, we all said, so we had time over the summer to work together to plan how we're flexibly grouping the kids. So that will be a discussion amongst the staffing. So we only do for math right now. I'm sorry?
It'd be 40 fifth graders. You'd still have to split them, and that would be one group.
So no, that's what I'm saying. The 4-5 may have to teach a group of math. I have to, we're going to decide that. Because it was done a little differently this year with how grade 2 is right now all in one room with some support. And then there's 2 classes for grade 3 for math that are flexibly grouped based upon unit, and 2 classes for grade 4 math that are flexibly based upon units. So they do a pre-assessment, they flexibly group the kids, and then they teach the unit, and then the next unit, they do the same thing.
Need 4th grade.
So,
Am I correct in saying, Christina, that if we, so you're saying there's a +1 at kindergarten, and then a +1 at
Yes.
4/5.
the kindergarten,
However, If you didn't create that 4-5, then you would need somebody at 5 anyway, because then you have 40 kids. So regardless, that is almost sort of a necessity
That's where I
in the
don't get
scheme
where
of
you're
things.
getting 40 kids.
So
Because
there's 17 and
17
23.
fifth graders on the 4-5 line, and there's 23 fifth graders on the fifth grade line.
Yeah, I know, I get it on that side, but I don't get it on the other side.
You got to look at this year's
Where it's coming
existing.
from.
So if you look at the 3-4, there's 9
Nine.
fourth graders,
18.
There's 18, because there's 2 classes, 18.
18, oh, that's what it is.
Oh, that's what it is.
So I think we just answered why there was
Yeah.
confusion.
Yeah.
There's 18 because there's 2 groups of 9,
2 groups of 9.
plus the 22. Okay.
No, but they've already gotten 4th grade. They can't get 4th grade again.
Yeah, but they're gonna go to 5th grade.
The 4-5 loop is going to have 5th grade.
Yeah, so it answers my
The only
fifth,
pool of kids that need 4th grade content next year are gonna be coming out of the 2-3
it does
split.
answer the fifth grade
Or the
question.
two.
Yeah, but it doesn't answer the one
So-
section
Doesn't
of
answer
fourth grade.
Karen's
So the one
question,
section
but
of 4th grade still has
That's the
way too
question
many
you got
kids
there
that
that
could
you're wondering
possibly
about.
go there.
But the split is answered, that
split is-
question.
Split is answered,
Yeah.
yes.
I was wondering
Unless you're
about that.
pulling kids from 2nd and jumping 3rd, but then you start your loop again,
'Cause
which
then,
you
yeah,
said
then
you
we'd
don't
have
want
to
to do.
loop
So
in.
that, my question still goes with how do you have 23 who need
You're
4th grade
35.
content?
We'll figure out the fourth grade.
Yeah.
Yes, I've got that on my notes.
Are there only 35 fourth graders? Third graders?
There are
Yeah.
14 and
That's
28,
2 at 14, so 28.
28, and then another 14.
5.
28 and 14.
42.
Yeah, 42.
Yep.
2 groups of 14, and then the 14 above it.
Yeah,
Third
the number of
graders.
parentheses before that gives you the number of sections.
Sorry, yes, the number in parentheses after the grade.
I think that's what was
That's where
throwing
we
some of
were-
us off.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
I
know.
That's okay.
This should
Yeah.
actually.
So the specialists and staffing will remain the same. I have a .67 instructional coach because we're looking at 2 instructional coaches for the elementary level, pre-K to 2 and a 3 to 5. So we'd share across the 3 schools. And obviously, they're going to help with the, the teaching and learning and helping teachers in modeling lessons and supporting teachers as well. For paraprofessionals, if there is an additional classroom, I will need an additional .75 paraprofessional. Currently, we do have one of the paraprofessionals in the classroom is used as a special education paraprofessional as well. So we're hiring for the current pre-K room. That room is, we have a paraprofessional being hired, and we're in the process of that right now, which is the position that was not filled with that was budgeted for, that was not filled with the additional kindergarten classroom. So, and then I'm looking for a .5 custodian. Currently, we share our evening custodian with JFK, and we have 1 head custodian during the day, and then we have 1.5 at night. If there is ever a snowstorm at night, in the earlier parts, when there's 1 person up there. So, and also it will cut down on sub-coverage, because what they've done in the past, when we've had the 3 total custodians in the building, they've just sucked it up for a couple days or a day if someone's out, and just picked up trash before they leave. The head custodian will go actually, he still does that now. Mr. Langto comes in at 6 o'clock every morning, and he's there till at least 3 every day. Some days he's in at 5:30, some days he's in at 5, so he is definitely doing, in his schedule is 7 to 3. So he is trying to get stuff done to help with that, so I'm asking for a .5 custodian to allow for the 2 at night and 1 during the day. And we have different events, so by having 1.5 custodians at night, basketball we don't have in, because it makes it hard for them to clean with only 1.5 custodians. So we only allow them to use 4 days a week, because they don't get to clean the gym, because there's just not enough manpower.
So if you go to 2, so you take the half back that we took off last time, and you go to 2, did you still stay at a half? Or did you move yours? You didn't move yours.
Actually, I just caught, we have one head custodian in each.
Yeah,
is
so we
0.5,
have one head
0.5.
custodian that we share between both buildings.
Right.
I have a nighttime custodian.
I have a
Steve has a
nighttime one.
nighttime, and then we have the
The
.5
half between the
that
two.
help, right,
So you have 2 total, if you,
at night.
well, 2 in the day, 2 at night, between the two of you.
One during the day.
One
One
during the
during the
day,
day split.
one during the day,
And you have 1 during the day,
right.
and then you have 2 at night.
They have two and a
Two-
half.
two and a
so
half.
2.5.
And
I have
his, the half typically spends 4 hours at the complex, and his second 4-hour shift is at Millville.
But you would still stay at 2.5,
Yeah,
We would need to stay at 2.5.
yeah.
but not add the other half for you.
You only get an arm.
But, well, you can run that half snow blower.
But it's essentially,
It's an increase of a
that
0.5,
half,
is
I was
that?
gonna say,
Right.
the 0.5,
Yeah.
So it's a .5. The other thing is, I mean, from whenever 4 to 6:30, there's also one person in the building. So if something happens to him, there's no knowing of it. So that's the other thing.
that on top of all the projects and the way they keep that building in shape, I think is justified in itself. And it's definitely something we had to take away years ago that has been just as missed as teachers in the classroom, I think, for all of our buildings.
I mean, our custodians do a lot of repair themselves. We don't contract out much.
Yep.
They do.
Friday during the
That's true in
PD day.
complex.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
They all do.
They also don't really know their hours. Like I said, Greenie's hours are 7 to 3, but he's there way before 7.
Yeah, he's way before
And
7.
same with Dennis LaRose. I mean, we get there at 7,
that's
and
your
he's
one
already
person during
been
the
there
day.
for an hour. Yeah.
Between the 2 of you.
Only
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, they put in at least an hour off the clock every day.
So you don't have anyone in the complex that comes in earlier, like a mid shift or a split shift? They both work
They both come in at 3.
and there's one person.
So currently now, our evening custodian goes there at 2, because
comes at
Dennis
2,
leaves
right.
at 2. So he's there from 2 to 5:45, then comes to Millville, travels over to Millville, so gets there around 6-ish, has his dinner, because he hasn't had supper yet, and then can clean. So, and like I was saying, they do a lot of repairs themselves. Friday during the PD day, they pulled apart a toilet, replaced the toilet, and fixing urinals, and, I mean, stuff that they're doing now because they have 2 people, and they don't typically have 2 on shift, the whole shift. So, so that was the request for that. And then the last addition is, I'm as well looking for another building sub, and to help with defraying the cost of calling day-to-day subs, as well as covering miss prep periods, which is in the contract for the teachers. So if they miss a prep period, they have to get paid for it. I often find myself trying to mishmash people in, just like Carol and Steve. Oh, you don't have, your class has period you're covering for this teacher, okay, they need some coverage here, so I need to do that. So, I hope that in turn, it will help with the longevity of some of our subs, and it also helps us build some of our teaching base. You can hire subs that are, with minimal teaching, just getting out of college, and you can groom them, and you can get some great teachers, so. And,
I know we have asked a lot of your time, but I have questions of the 3 of you.
okay.
We know when we received these numbers from Matt at our last meeting, that we had level services and 0, and that these are your priorities. These are your priorities. Eventually, we have to come up with our priorities, and we know we cannot submit to our towns the 0 based all the priorities. So without us making decisions, I mean, we have to make them eventually. But how would you prioritize your priorities?
Well, I was thinking when we had a budget presentation before, one of my staff got up and they said, basically bodies. They want more people in the classroom, more boots on the ground is what they want. And I would echo that.
I also think
Can I
supporting our
clarify what you mean by that, Steve?
Sure.
Because bodies in the classroom can be any number of things. You're saying specifically, and if you're not, tell me this.
Sure.
You're saying, you're saying specifically the teacher that you requested at grade 2.
Is your highest priority.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're looking for.
That's what I'm looking
Yes,
for.
okay.
And
So
honestly,
your grade 2
in
teacher.
terms of making the whole engine work, I think those instructional coaches are going to be enormously needed. Enormous.
I would say that the priority is the one FTE. I mean, class sizes are absolutely. I would agree with the instructional coach. I would also have to say that the intervention materials. That's a really hard question, by the way.
And I get it, and nobody, we don't want to make cuts.
I know.
But we also know that we can't, 16%, what was it? The zero?
So 12, right?
12%, we
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
take that to a town. We can't take it to either town.
Yeah, no.
And so we know that. So, and my feeling, and the rest of the group can certainly chime in, but I would rather hear from you who've heard from your teachers about where the priorities of the priorities are, as opposed to me saying, well, I really like that nice, fancy, clean building. I want to make sure, and we do. Every single one of these things is critically important. We get it. But we also get where we stand financially. And
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to actually speak to it, truly. Because in prior years, we've put in our priorities and they were gone before we even had a chance to speak to it. So I appreciate that.
In the same way, classroom size is super important. I think we can hold our staff here longer and retain staff longer if we don't burn them out. I think that the importance of supporting them as well with the instructional coach to help them grow and be able to provide models of what we're talking about and not just us tell them what we're talking about and show them a video or whatnot, have someone actually be able to go in and help them plan and help them model. And honestly, an instructional coach would be fantastic this year for the multi-grade classrooms because they could help provide. I've spent some time at the beginning of the year working with teachers in just looking at their 2 grades of reading and trying to figure out how you can teach author's purpose, or do an author study on 2 different authors. And I've spent some time sitting and we've reconfigured some of their units to make it work together. So honestly, instructional coach would have worked good for me this year. So I think that would be important for supporting our teachers as well.
Actually, in the previous district, we had instructional coaches, and they were great. They worked both ways. I know some of the staff, they're worried about the instructional coach, what really is their role. They are not, they're not evaluating teachers. They absolutely are not. They're a support type of thing where, wow, I'm really struggling with, this phonics concept. Can you help me out with this? I've done, this, and this. It's just not working. Can you help me? And that's great that they can go to the coach, sort of aside from, they wouldn't want to come to their evaluator and admit and show them their weak spot. But they could do that to the coach, and they could get some sort of private help on the side, so to speak. And similarly, we could see something in classroom and say, hey, why don't you, talk with, Mrs. Jones, she's having a hard time with this. So it works both ways, but it's important that they're there to support the teachers, but they're not evaluating.
And a new string for the snow blower.
Yes, and we need a new string for the snow blower.
Jack's going to get you that.
Jack's gonna get that.
Jack has connections.
I think the other really important thing to put out here with these needs, and I think it will be important when this actually goes out to the community for them to see the actual, because I'm looking at some of this stuff in here that says, you need, white cardstock. I probably in my card supply basement have enough to do every school on this in this district. But people don't think of things. We think of Kleenex or Clorox bleach, but people probably have. I don't have foundations, but I certainly maybe have some things, or maybe there's community members who know of grants, or, you know, we have to start letting people know what we need, because somebody may have a real brainstorm idea that hasn't crossed our table yet.
Well, one thing similar to that is I have, Jack's mom, the Council on Aging in Blackstone, I have 6 basically tax work-off people working at the complex. They're working off their taxes.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're great. They work in classrooms. We have one that actually likes to work in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
But 5 of the 6 are in classroom. That's great. It doesn't cost us a nickel. But that's a good partnership with the community,
Yeah.
and that's going well. I have 6. I'd love to have 66 if we could get them.
And if I could just add, I did have a conversation with Bebo today, but also, working closely throughout this start of the year with MESPA, I am just, I'm totally humbled by what our parent organizations do for our schools. I mean, the amount of effort, energy, and I'm, I know people say that, but I mean, it makes such a difference in the day-to-day functioning of our schools. I've never seen anything quite like it, to be honest. It is just a huge asset to our communities. And I just, I know this video, this won't come out till later, but just a very sincere thank you to our parent organizations. At my meeting today with the BPO folks they came in just busting about the idea of being able to put a makerspace. And the enthusiasm, the excitement. I mean, anytime we've asked, Karen and her organization for anything, any support, the District of One events, I mean, these parent organizations with the middle school, they pull together in a New York minute to make whatever it is happen for our kids. So I'm really, really grateful for that. Because they try to do exactly what you're saying. Jane. They're amazing.
$8,000 for foundations, maybe not, but $114 for letterboards, or $100 for cardstock, or some of the other stuff that's on here, and people will see it. Hopefully people will take some time to look at it, and there may be somebody who says, I can help out that way. And as a community, that's what we have to start to do, because we're can't do it alone.
The Millville community this summer did, Michelle Belanger organized a school supply drive. So if for teachers that needed supplies or whatnot, we got binders and notebooks, and or students, if students needed different things. So that was helpful as well. Glue sticks, I mean, you name it, and that's something that our community did. And they had a box in one of the stores, and people drop stuff off, and when she came to drop it off to me, I was just shocked. I was absolutely floored. Not surprised, but a shock at the amount. It was just great to see the community pulling together, and I agree, something like cardstock. I as well have probably a lot of cardstock in my house, but
how much you want?
Amazon has the tablets on sale for $50 right now, so finding those sales.
Right, and she had found, just originally when we did pricing, it was a 2-pack for $199, but $50 is even cheaper. So.
And I just want to add to what Dr. DeFalco just said about the PTOs. I don't even think people comprehend the amount of money that's brought in by them each year, or the money spent. I mean, they've been supporting our club for the last countless years in every building. And without that, we wouldn't have them, because we didn't have them in the budget. So it's not just hundreds of dollars, it's not just thousands, it's tens of thousands brought in by and spent by our PTOs.
Also, countless hours that they've
the
and
time.
their hours, yeah.
I mean, listening to the work Beepo has done on the complex and weeding and mowing the lawn
stunning.
and stuff,
It's amazing.
it's crazy, that I didn't know that they were having our lawn mowed for us. It's just, I keep finding out these kind of bits of information that's
That you don't know unless you're.
yeah, you don't know unless you're in it, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow,
I don't even think our community knows.
Unbelievable.
If their kids aren't there, they don't know that the Millville fundraiser raised over $10,000. They don't know those unless they're part of it in the moment. And
It's incredible.
It's important
It
to
really
know.
is.
That's absolutely true. If you come to the complex and you look, you see the granite pebbles around the entire perimeter of the building and the big granite boulders.
The painting.
Every single bit of that was donated through the BPO connections and their hustle and their hard work. Every single cent of that. Didn't cost a penny. But
And I think to that point, too, I mean, I think the parents' groups, as people are listening to this, and this will probably be a well-watched one as we start talking about the budget, those organizations only survive with volunteers. So those people who are not involved, come out for an hour, come out for a day, volunteer to chair an event. I know, there is a group of us that have been doing the PTOs and the BPOs and the MESPAs, and, the more we have, the less we get drained as well. So if you can step up and help out, sometimes it's just an hour, and I know, people are like, well, I work.
You can
Like,
find time
we all,
anytime.
there's time
I have
anytime.
homework assignments that you can do at 11 o'clock at night while you're watching TV.
Plinko board.
Yes.
Plinko board, right there, sit it. Weekends, because it's not just during the day.
Yep. And, like,
It's during the day.
the things like box tops and Coke rewards and all those things, those are things that anybody in the community, not just school families, can kind of send in. And I mean, I used to be the box top coordinator. You make a ton of money with those things, so send them in before they expire.
Make sure they're not expired.
$740.
Years, so give them to us.
We got $740 our last box.
How much?
Yep.
$740 our last
Yeah,
box.
it's
top.
it's
And there are
amazing.
community members that mail them in.
Yep.
We get random mailings of them from community members who've been
parents
clipping
that-
them off.
I've had kids, they'll call me or email me and say, oh, I have this, you want this? I'm like, sure.
Rewards, same thing.
Every 10 cents counts.
Millville, MESPA does Coke Rewards, and we get them from a local restaurant. They collect them off the tops of their bottles in their restaurant, and they give them to us. Thank you. They give them to us to enter. And everyone is worth 5 cents unless it's double, and then it's 10 cents.
You're drinking a Pepsi, just saying.
I know, sorry. But Sarah just gave me her Cokes.
I make up
We're
for
good.
it, trust me.
Me too.
But every little bit helps.
Thank you very much. Anybody
Thank you.
have other questions, concerns?
And I just want to add one thing, and I certainly can't speak to any process prior to this, but I do very much appreciate the amount of time the three of them put in, not on their own, just on their own kind of piece of work, but the alignment that we are really striving towards at the elementary level is significant. And you'll hear similar next week with the middle school and high school principals. They spearheaded this weekly PLC. They meet as a team every week. Usually before or after school, when the kids aren't in the building, to go through all of that truly becoming a district of one, aligning the efforts, aligning the focus, even to the point where some of the teachers have kind of chuckled and said about their weekly instructional newsletters, are they like in a book club? Are they all reading the same things? Because our
Answer is
newsletters
yes.
all look the same, and I kind of laughed, and I said, yeah, they're all working on it together. And you'll see the same next week with Mike and Tanya and Jan and Keith. The four of them meet now every single week on their own. And they're aligning this work vertically through the district. And so it's just such a shift, and I think it shows
It does.
in examples like this, where, this could have been a much lengthier, more difficult process with everybody on totally different pages, and they're not. They're on the same page with where we're trying to go. So a big thank you to you for that.
Anyone else? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
We do not have a community forum, but is there anything you would like to say? Thank you for coming.
Books that have not been offered in my house that I'm happy to give you.
As do we. We're very diverse. Anyone other issues, topics for the good of the, sitting here on our
When
backside?
is our next meeting?
What?
When is our next meeting?
Our next meeting is next week, Wednesday. And that's a 5 o'clock,
Oh, it's a 5?
right? Right?
Yes, 5 to 7.
Yeah, it's 5.
Yep.
What is
That's
is
early.
that?
That's the middle
Middle
school
and high
and the high school.
Yes, I was gonna say, I think.
We did that for something. There was an event
Yeah, there
or
was
something. A game or
something
something,
to,
maybe?
is it a concert or is it the soup bowl or
It
the?
was something
No, I
like
think it's a
that.
band concert.
Next week, the 30th,
Band
Is that
concert.
what it was?
We did 5 PM and it's here.
It's here.
Yep. And I think we have a hard stop. I think that was the
We
idea.
did.
Yeah.
We have to end at 7.
And I think
That's
there's
the
a Hall
concert.
of Fame event too.
But Mr. Schaefer doesn't have to be here next week.
I'm sorry, there's a what?
I think there's also the high school Hall of Fame or something.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Yes, there is the high school athletic hall of fame. Yep. It's
That's
next
next week.
week as well.
I'm not being inducted. Anyone?
I have that. You guys need the warrants.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, you did?
Yeah, okay, good. We don't vote on it, but it's okay.
I'm sorry, who was those? Who was those?
Jack and Karen.